If you're rocking 40s on a stock axle, if you just bought a new Jeep and you're curious about the maximum tire size that you can put on there before you have to start upgrading or before you cause any problems, if you don't know what an axle is and that is all gibberish to you, well then today's show is for you, I guarantee it. Part one in a two-part series. Today we're talking about axles. Specifically, this week, we're talking about the stock axles and some of their limitations, what we can do to help beef it up, maximum tire size, all that fun stuff, and more. Today on the show, as always, joined by Ryan Stoangi from Combat Off-Road, Tim Rogers from TMR Customs, and man, these two guys, they know their stuff when it comes to axles, and yeah, I'm going to do my best to get your questions answered. Let's do it today on the show. All right, okay, so I guess we'll just get started. So, hey, welcome everyone back to another show of Light Bars and Lockers. As always, I'm joined by my two co-hosts. We have Ryan Stoangi from Combat Off-Road and Tim Rogers from TMR Customs. How's it going, guys?
Good. Great. I like the bell intro, though. That's cool.
I know, right? It's the new sound effects we have going on. I got a little board over here. I'm going to start
rushing. I was like, yes, I'm important.
One of those old school, you know, like radio programs with like some lady walking with her shoes. She left the building. Yeah, awesome. So it's warm around here, yes? Everyone's hot?
Yeah, ball cheddars.
Nice. Yeah, I had a meeting yesterday with a client in Houston, and you know they're usually giving us a hard time about how cold it is up here, and for the past week we're considerably warmer than they have been. So I'm like the reason it's like that is because I haven't got the JL yet, right? The second the JL shows up, I'll pop the hard top off, put the roof down, and it'll start snowing like instantly. It hasn't rained in like 3 weeks, but it will the minute that JL shows up.
You won't be allowed to enjoy that.
I know, right? Tim, how's the Gladiator? I hear you're getting some wheels and some fun stuff put on.
It's good. It should be wrapped up today, but you're getting a set of 37-inch BFGs on some method wheels. Did an AEV lift kit. They do like a 2-inch spacer kit. It seemed super complete in terms of shock extensions, drive shaft spacer, even a programmer with it. So yeah, looking forward to getting that back and seeing what the difference is in ride quality on the bigger tires of the small lift, and see how that compares. And then we got new bumpers installed on a red JK and a spare tire delete, which we were talking about most recently here. So yeah, that really changed the look of it, getting the spare tire off of the back and going with the delete. So that looks pretty cool too. I'll have to get some pictures up of it, but it looks nice and clean.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, I saw the rear bumper. Is that steel it or is that powder coated?
That one's powder coat. Yeah. I prefer to do the steel on everything because it can be touched up. But on a few of these projects lately, we've just been running tight for time, and it's easier just to set out for powder coat, and we can keep working on something else while that's getting done, as opposed to spending the time to paint ourselves if we're tight for time.
Yeah, fair enough. No, that makes sense. Awesome. And Ryan, I see a monster truck on your social media feeds over there. So I assume that means we've got the 41.5 set up?
Yeah, drove it the other day for the first time. Well, the other night, like 3 o'clock in the morning, we had it ripping up down the road.
Nice.
Seemed all right. And then we were a little tired, so I wanted to safety check it the next day, and then I drove it to my house. Then Christina stole it like immediately and ripped around the block, like redlining it. So it's pretty funny, but yeah, it seems really good. It drives nice and smooth, even for those 41.5-inch pit bulls. So yeah, we put some trusses on it and stuff. Like we're gonna talk about that kind of stuff today, but the tires and the wheels are definitely a little heavy for what I got. But I'm aware, like we were talking before, so. I know I'm going to take it easy, but I just hope Christine toast it, before I have a chance to swap over some bigger stuff.
Nice.
I need it to work a little before you take it back apart. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it turned out real good. I'm real happy with it. It's fun, yeah, for sure. It sits nice.
How's it with the manual? Does it did you have to put any sort of chips or anything to help it, or did you just go?
No, you could do there's a whole bunch of different calibrators. For me, I just need it for the speedo readout because the train is manual, so I'm in charge of gears, so it doesn't need to know anything that way.
Yeah.
My speedo's way out, like 20K. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's pretty wild. But yeah, that'd be about it. And the manual, it's fine. Just I have 48s in the gear in the diffs in that one, but like I said, because I don't like going anything steeper than that in the 44s. So, but it would probably need like realistically like a 530 gear or something would be good. You know what I mean, for that size tire. But I wouldn't do that till we pop in the bigger guys. So you do have to saw through it a little bit, but it actually works good. Just if you ever get into that, just don't undershift. If you know what I mean, just run through it a bit. Like I'll ship that like 35, $4,000, and it's okay. You know what I mean?
Right.
But just the rotational mass on those tires is wild. So when you undershift, the thing's just like not happy, right? So,
Right. I bet.
but, I had my buddy Kurt drive it. He's a car sales guy, and I shouldn't have. He's just like, we're just like, I'm like, dude, just fucking stay in it for 3 more seconds. You know what I mean? But by the end of the little trip, he got the hang of it. But yeah, I'm real happy with it, to be honest. It works real good.
Nice. That's awesome. Cool. Well, I guess that's a good segue into our discussion today. So today it's part 1 of 2 parts. It's about axles and axle upgrades. And today we're going to talk about sort of the foundations of axles and you know what they are, what we can do with stock axles, etc. So let's start with the axle itself. So, and I guess it is just a basic understanding. The axle consists of multiple things. So Ryan, do you want to start? Maybe explain like what components are included when we say the axle and the stock axle.
Okay, yeah. So we want to go super basic. It's those long things underneath the front and rear that the tires are attached to. So yeah, the housing, which holds, houses everything there. Like it's going to house your knuckles that your wheels are going to steer off of. It's going to house your control arms, which locates that axle underneath the vehicle. Your track bar, which locates your axle left to right under the vehicle. And like I said, the most important thing, it kind of houses those wheels. Inside, you're going to have like a ring and pinion. That's a gear that's going to drive you when you put power through the transmission motor transfer case. And then you're going to have your axle shafts, which obviously are inside that are attached to the wheels. There's other parts in there, but everything, that's just kind of what you got. You got gears on shafts to turn wheels with a housing and some oil in the middle, because it gets real hot with metal on metal. So that's kind of where you're at with the super basics of what an axle is.
Okay. So we're talking about obviously multiple components, like the differential and I mean, that's all included, correct?
Yeah, I mean, people are going to cross over terms. Like people are going to say diffs and then include the axles in that sense. But yeah, your differential, for the most part, is that center section behind all those fun bolts, and that's going to be like your ring and pinion, and if you have traction in there, like a locker or a limited slip or just open, and then we can talk about what all those mean too, but that's kind of it. You want to change your gearing and your differentials, which are your axles realistically. They don't really go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other.
Okay, got it. All right, cool. Yeah, Tim, and actually, I think Ryan brought up a good point. So if you have lockers, that's also included, right? Not everyone has lockers, but if you have lockers, they're included, correct?
Exactly. If we're talking axles and axle upgrades, we'd be talking traction devices, lockers, etc. That's definitely included in the broad spectrum of axle upgrades for sure.
Okay, cool. All right, well, let's talk about the stock axles itself. So, what are some of the limits and why, and does everyone need to maybe discuss upgrading their axles? Is it a necessity?
Well, it really depends on, most of the time it's going to be tire size is going to be the really determining factor. And then if you bought a Jeep without traction and you really want to go off-roading and do a little more technical stuff, you're going to want to have some traction. So it's really on the individual, and then it's even the individual Jeep. Like you can get a Jeep with, we're going to bust into some stuff maybe people aren't familiar with, but you get a Jeep that came with a tow package and it's like a Sport or Sahara or something, and it has like a 373 ratio gear, it has like a 410 ratio gear, and you're okay to put a X size tire on that. Like you could run 35s for sure and still have all the power in the world, you know what I mean, and have like a reasonable acceleration. Whereas if you, even on those type of gears, you could maybe squeak 37s, but then you're into the point where even 35s and 37s, you're probably going to want to reinforce those axles just because you're just like material thickness, diameters, like just volume, right? You know what I mean? It's just like working out, you just got to strengthen them up for the extra beef, right? So
okay, cool.
Yeah, so basically when I talk to customers on the retail side, like we're at Off-Road Addiction, first thing we do, if someone wants, hey, I want to run tire X and I want to have this lift kit, and then I got to go well, do you know what gear ratio you have in your axles? And they're going to go, no, most of the time, like 98% of the time, which is totally fair. Nobody's going to really remember that unless you're super into those numbers, right? But so all I need, and all anyone really needs, even yourself. So if you're curious about this, you can call any service or parts department at a new car dealership, wherever you purchase, or doesn't matter where you purchase, and say, hey, I want to know my gear ratio and my axles. And they give them the VIN, the last 8 digits, and they'll tell you exactly what's in there from the factory. So the only challenge is if you bought something super old, like if you grab somebody's TJ, it looks like it was put together or something like that, your challenge will be that may not be the OEM pieces in there just because of the time, right? So, but if you're in a new JKs and the JLs, you just give a quick call and then you'll know, right? And then you come back to us with that information, or we find it out for you, and then I let you know what you could run safely or would make sense to you with that axle ratio. And then if not, we let you know what it costs to regear. And if you're going like bigger, you know what I mean, or you're going to go rough on stuff like 35s and you want to go rough, we're going to want to grab some of those TMR products and put some trusses and some stuff on there and some C-guts. It's stuff to strengthen up the outer housing and throw that ratio in there. So it's kind of on the individual. Not everybody needs a lockers. Not everybody. Like if you're just hanging out, going to the beach, doing some one-on-one trails, like you just want to take the family out, or you just want to go like a scenic tour, you don't need lockers and all that stuff, and you don't need giant tires, but it just depends on you. You know what I mean? It's nice to make those vehicles your own. So if you want to pick a wheel and pick a 33-inch tire and you don't want to lift it, you just want to be able to use it, yeah, it's probably set for whatever you got. You know what I mean? Like right out of the box. So you won't have to worry about any different factory ratio. But if you're going to go 35s or 37s or 40s or 41 and a halves, there's a whole bunch of different variables involved there.
Okay, cool. Well, actually, so I think that's a good segue to our product of the week. If we're talking about, beefing up your stock axles, I think Tim at TMR, they've got an awesome product. Let's Tim, tell us about the axle trusses.
Yeah, so like Ryan mentioned, based on if we push up tire size and we want to be hard on the Jeep, we've got to strengthen up that axle housing. Ultimately, that factory housing is meant to lug around a factory size tire or a little larger. They know a lot of people plan on putting a bigger tire on it. But if you went and looked at the axle under a bigger, say, full-size truck, you'd see there's quite a size and girth difference. And I mean, we're going to get into that stuff in episode 2. But what we want to do is prevent the housing from bending or flexing. Because once that housing's bent, for the most part, it should be replaced. So either replaced with another stock housing or replaced with an aftermarket housing. So our axle truss kits add reinforcement to that housing to add bend resistance and some rigidity to it. We're just trying to keep that thing straight. If you look at some Jeeps that have been pounded hard without reinforcement, the tires will effectively be smiling at you, like they're cambered way in on the top, and they're like that housing's toast. It should really be replaced. So the axle truss kits, we carry them for everything back to like XJs and TJs on current. The JL, we're still kind of waiting on. The housings and the knuckles are a lot beefier on the JL than they were on the JK. The JK was really the weak link kind of in all the Jeeps, and that's kind of what led to all this whole axle truss and C-gusset craze. For the JL, what we currently do is diff covers, which we can get into in another episode, as well as like that a disconnect skid for that front axle disconnect, because a lot of people see it as the weak link on the JL and the JT, so we did skip plate for it right away. But if you've got a JK or an older vehicle, definitely take a look at our axle trusses if you want to run a bigger than stock tire or you're hard on it off-road. They're peace of mind, and it protects the hardest to swap out part kind of in that whole assembly.
Okay, no, that's amazing. Okay, great. And so how did they, well, first of all, is it like a do-it-yourself sort of thing? So we just order them up, they come, and then we can sort of do it ourselves, or how does that work?
That's an awesome question. So they're all weld-on. So if you've got welding and fabrication skills, or a friend does, then yeah, you can tackle it. We recommend, if you're doing it at home, like welding them at home, pull those axles out of the vehicle and get them up on a bench. You're going to be able to do it easier. If you go to a shop like Off-Road Addiction, and obviously they're pros at what they're doing, they'll be able to put it up on a hoist and get it right at eye level and do a good job on the welding and cleaning of the housing. But yeah, people should know they're extensive in terms of the work involved. It's not a bolt-on modification. You are going to be welding to the factory axle housing to strengthen it. So yeah, that's a great question in terms of your skill set. If you can cut, grind, weld, and fabricate, for sure you can take this on. If that's outside of your skill set and you're not comfortable with that, then yeah, you definitely want to go to a qualified shop that's done them before to do a good job for you.
Awesome. Okay, good stuff. So Ryan, what are some of the telltale signs that, maybe, because I know a lot of people will just throw on bigger tires and then just wait, right? Like we'll throw 37s on, and if when the stock axle goes, then we'll look at upgrading at that point. What are some of the telltale signs, and when should we start looking for maybe some of the problems with the axles themselves?
Well, if we do what I was talking about originally, and you're kind of aware of it, it's better, because you're going to have a lot of other problems. Like I'll just throw numbers out there, but like let's say we had a 307 ratio or a 321 ratio, and we put 35s or 37s on it, and we got the lift kit we want and all that fun stuff, and we don't do any preventative like destruction, upgrades, you're going to have a lot of hard time on other stuff. Like you are working the motor harder, you are working the transmission harder, you are doing a lot of things that you're messing with. So you're putting premature wear on a lot of other stuff in the Jeep that you probably shouldn't. Will it be catastrophic immediately? Probably not. But if it's a vehicle you're going to keep, either one, be super easy on it until you save up the budget or figure out what you want to do to make it work properly, or be prepared to have problems in the future, right? So, but yeah, telltale signs like stuff that even I'd be concerned about, like just premature bearing wear, the quarter-ton stuff, half-ton stuff. You put giant tires on. It really depends on what we're doing, but like your pinion bearings are going to go quicker. Ball joints are smaller; they're going to go quicker. Your unit bearings are smaller, like where your front wheels are. Your rear axle bearings are small. Everything's smaller, so they're gonna take on a lot more heat and abuse and like banging around. Like you got all that unsprung weight, you got all these different things going on. You're hitting potholes with giant tires and little steering components. You're sawing the steering into parking lots as a daily driver at low speed, full friction. You know what I mean? Like you're crushing stuff out quicker, right? So if you are going to do this, and if you kind of skipped out, and it's not even skipped out, you just kind of were like, I can't get it all done, but I want what I want, just at least be mindful of safety inspections. Not like a safety for a vehicle kind of thing where you gotta go get a paperwork, but I'd really encourage you to check your steering with a friend, or just book an appointment. Like for like our retail shop, like it's a half hour. It's not a crazy amount of money to invest in your safety of you, your family, and everyone else on the road, right? So if you're beating on these little things, quarterly, just go, what, I'm gonna take it in, or I'm rotating my tires the second time this year. I'm just gonna pay the half hour, or I'm gonna get a buddy who's a mechanic or someone at least else that understands the fundamentals to like give my ball joints a check, wiggle my steering wheel, make sure there's no play in those tire ends, grab my tire, shake it up and down, see if my wheel bearings are toast. Like they're going to wear out extremely fast in comparison to what the OEM designed them for based on that weight and diameter of tire that you would have run when you picked that thing up brand new or at a stock. You know what I mean? So I'm getting older, so like safety is like on my brain like continuously.
Sure.
And I want everyone to continue to have fun and enjoy themselves and not kill anyone or hurt anybody, or even if you don't get hurt, all of a sudden your wheel falls off and takes out your brakes and the rest of the truck, and the wheel comes up and smashes your fender. That's way more expensive than a fucking safety check for a half hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just saying that'd be the only thing. That'd be the only thing. Actually, one thing I saw that freaked me out on a trail, like on greens, Tim knows greens, but on the way down, one of our friends busted the sector shaft off his power steering box like flush up, and that was just something like, wow, like he could have busted that on the way home down the highway. Like it totally freaked me out. Like I created like a little mini winch pulley system, and I steered the thing all the way down greens with the winch in out down the whole
That's awesome.
It was pretty wild, but I've never seen that. I have actually never seen it break like that, but that's tough. So every time I look at RJK, like I stick my stupid head up there and I try and look for like hairline fractures or something. Like it like panicked me, right? But I don't know, just a little weird thing. But
all right,
that's again just a lot of extra stress, right? But I mean, there's upgrades for steering too, all the way right to your box and stuff like that. But that's some other time.
Okay, cool. So Tim, a question then: if I have just a stock, let's say I get a stock Rubicon out of the gate, it comes now with 33s. But I wheel it hard. Do I still need to consider upgrading the axles, or is it sort of made to take a considerable amount of abuse.
You could probably give that thing a decent lashing. I mean, everyone's idea of wheeling hard is different. So I usually try and describe to people, like, when someone says I wheel hard, I'm like, are you the type of person that'll take like 3 shots at an obstacle and then ask for a tow or get out the winch line? Are you the type of guy that isn't afraid to take more than 3 shots and pop air under the tires? I mean, if you want to have the tires leave the ground and they come back into contact with the ground while you're on the gas pedal, then to me, yeah, that's very hard on equipment. I've seen it firsthand. So yeah, I think like a 37, and if you told me you have 37s and you wheel hard, yeah, I would say you want to beef up those housings. Beyond that, we're talking ring and pinion ratios, like Ryan's saying, like you probably want to regear. And now you're at the point where you're going to want to be looking at axle shaft upgrades as well. So you could keep a U-jointed style shaft like the factory does, go with like a Yukon or G2. There's tons of aftermarket options out there. My personal favorite, and I think the cream of the crop for axle upgrades, is from RCV Performance. Most people would know them from the orange boot on the axle shaft. They're a lifetime warranty against breakage, and they're just stout. So axles are one of those things where it's all kind of got to work together as a symphony, and all the parts got to be on the same strength level. It's not a matter of, I trust my housings, I can go beat the shit out of it now, because you're gonna have an axle shaft failure that can lead to a ball joint failure. They're one of the areas of the Jeep where you can spend the most money, and realistically you should, because you want durability to support that big tire you're running. So yeah, you can go have some fun for sure in that Rubicon on 37s, but if you want to beat the shit out of it, be prepared for some upgrades to those housings. It's not something you're going to be able to put a 40-inch or larger tire on and beat for years. It might work for you in the interim, but like Ryan's saying, accelerated wear of parts is going to catch you at some point, and you might be wishing you went with a more conservative tire size or did some more upgrades from the get-go. So yeah, just keep in mind, people should be realistic about what the stock equipment can take.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I think
one thing I would add, just be mind, like, you're probably okay if you do that full step with the RCVs and stuff, so that makes sense. The only thing is, sometimes if you go, you got to figure out, like, the pressure is going to find the weakest link too, right? So usually when you start upgrading a lot of stuff like that too, like, it's kind of like you're going to keep going, you're going to escalate your confidence level and all those fun things, and you're going to go a little harder. So if you go that far, when you break it, it's going to be way more expensive, you know what I mean? So back in the day, we used to say, maybe stick with the U-joint axle, just because if you break a $40 U-joint, you're all good. Like, if that's your linchpin, right? So it's kind of, whatever, you're paying to play, just play, right? But that was just one thing I wanted to add. Like, sometimes you do all this shit, and all of a sudden you just, like, those shafts took it, but the fucking locker didn't. You know what I mean? And then I got to take the whole thing apart and go inside, and then there's a couple grand. But some people don't stop and they take out a whole U-joint and the inner outer shaft, and then, even damage the knuckle or something like that. So it's kind of on you. You're going to know when you're going to fuck shit up. You're like, fuck, I'm going to fuck this up. You know what I mean? So just be prepared to get off the wallet when you do that. But
okay, cool. Actually, I wanted to rewind real quick, because you had said something earlier, Ryan, that I thought that maybe is important. A lot of people probably don't know their gear ratios, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that, because they all sort of, there's variations, if you will. What are the typical ratios for like a JKJL? So I know, like, for instance, the stock Sport is, one ratio, and then if you get the tow package, it's another. But there is pretty much a fairly.
I think from the OEM for like a cloud kind of a miles per gallon kind of thing, so they can run their Hellcats and do all their fun stuff. They want to make as many as they can and get that under that threshold, so they can build those super cool machines with the big power. So you're going to find like an abundance of vehicles with the smaller, lighter tire, like when you get into the regular bases and the X's and the sports and stuff, and they're going to be like a really high ratio, like I think like a 321, or like they used to have like the TJs like 307 stock too. Like, so then you just it's just lighter, right? Easier on fuel. So then it gives us that thing. But you get a tow package, you're probably looking at like a 373 gear. And then the Rubicons, some Rubicons even came with 373s, but 410s would be ideal for what we're talking about as like out of the box. You get the most out of that. 373 is kind of a stretch. You get away with it. And the 410s, but you're going to find limited numbers. Like someone had to order that specifically, like from new, and you're buying it used or something, or the guys at the dealership wanted a couple like tow package type vehicles and stuff like that. But there are going to be limited numbers. The majority are going to be like the real highway gears, like I said, like the 307s, 321s, 354s, that kind of stuff. You're going to see most of the vehicles like that, and that's going to be like you'd be on a stretch running 35s with any of those three ratios. You know what I mean? The Jeep's gonna be dogging. You're not gonna get headwinds. You're gonna be downshifting if you're manual. Your automatic transmission is gonna be fighting for gears. You know, if you're into the newer stuff, you're gonna want to get a programmer at least to let the computer know what size we've changed the tire and what ratio you got in it, so it kind of gives an idea where it's at, because it's going to be lostly hunting for gears and all that fun stuff.
Okay, cool. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and that was sort of my thought, because like I have the 373s with 35s, and it's not bad, but I got the programmer, right? So before I had that, it sucked.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
When I got it, it's like a new Jeep, like totally different. But you know, I agree. I don't think you'd want anything different, anything lower or whatever. I don't know if it's lower or higher, but into like the sports or what have you. You know, I can imagine why people are like, yeah, I changed to 35, now I got 0 power, like it doesn't go anywhere. You know, so
yeah, it's all ratios. Yeah,
right. Sure. So Tim, then what would you recommend someone, let's say I bought a Sport, I want to go to 35s or 37s, you know, I didn't get the Rubicon. What would be your recommendation on how to sort of handle that in terms of, you know, like step by step, you know, start with the this, then move to this, then move to that?
In terms of like what upgrades, like the
yes,
the
yeah,
order?
exactly. Yeah,
for sure. If it's primarily street driven Jeep and we're not going to off road that, I would look at doing your ring and pinions. Like we're talking, go to a higher numerical ratio. Like you're probably going to be up in 456, 488 territory. While you're doing that, you probably want to consider if you want a locker or a traction device at the same time. Like where I would know from off-road addiction, if we're doing ring and pinions, that whole differential's opened up, it's split. Now's the time to put in a locker. To go back and put in a locker after you've re-geared is, I mean, not to say there's anything wrong with that, but it's a horrible waste of money. You're paying for the labor one time if you do that locker at the same time as you're doing that ring and pinion ratio. So that's something to consider. So if now we're talking a Jeep that's more on the off-road side, if we're re-gearing it, we probably want to look at what traction devices we're going to do. And then the next upgrade I would do would be, if we are off-roading or we're running a big tire, do the Axel trusses, because that beefs up the housing. We don't want the housing to fail, because if the housing fails, we got to replace that whole unit. And then at that point, all your internals are coming out of it, ring and pinion, traction device, moving over to the new housing. That sucks. That's extensive. So strengthen the housing, and then we'd be looking at axle shafts, in my opinion, like we discussed earlier. And then beyond that, we're going to be looking at outer knuckles, brake upgrades, steering upgrades, etc. So I would start with the ring and pinions and the axle housings, and then beyond that you're kind of getting into the more extensive stuff, but that's really where I would start in my opinion.
Okay, got it. And the trusses that you have, are they JK or do you have TJ as well?
Yeah, so we've got XJ, TJ. So TJ we obviously do Dana 30 and 44. Same deal for the JK, Dana 30, Dana 44, Dana 44 rears, and C gussets for the JKs. And like I said, the JL, we're just kind of waiting a little bit to see what plays out and let crazy guys like Ryan find the weak link. And
I'll find it.
Exactly. And then yeah, we'll address that going forward. But yeah, JK is definitely the biggest market for axle trussing. The factory didn't do the best job in the design of that housing, as well as the inner Cs. They're terrible. They're very prone to bending. If you looked at the inner C, and literally that's what's described. If you went and looked at your axle, literally look for the C-shaped piece that holds the ball joint and the outer knuckles attached to. You can look at it and you can tell by looking at it that is not strong on a JK. Like flat out, look at that. Look at a JL. Go look at a 1-ton truck, and you'd be like, "Holy shit, that thing is a weak link for sure on the JK."
But so it's funny, right? When you look at the TJ ones,
yeah,
they look smaller, but they're tough, which is hilarious.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so crazy. When the JK first came out, you're like, oh, cool, finally they made something tougher. Mm-hmm. And then they're even weaker than the TJ stuff. Like, it's ridiculous.
They are, and we get people call us and they're like, I want C gussets for my TJ. I'm like, what size tire are you on? They're like a 35, and I'm like, truthfully, you're probably good to go. I'm like,
you're good.
You just think you need a C gusset because a C gusset came out for the JK to address a weak point there. And then you need it on your older Jeep. But yeah, in fact, like Ryan's saying, the inner Cs were actually tougher on the TJs and XJs as opposed to what came out on the JKs.
Okay, awesome. So we'll be sure then, because obviously you have the C gussets, we will link those up as well. So we'll make those as product of the week number 2.
The Deuce.
The Deuce. I love it. All right, cool. So I had a question. Now I forget, of course, about the just something you mentioned about the sea gussets. And actually, you know what my question was? We hear it a lot, and I've seen people ask this in different forums and what have you. Everyone talks about getting their Jeep on tons. Tim, what does that mean?
A 1 ton axle. So effectively, generally we'd refer to that as an 8-lug axle. So if you wanted to compare it to what's in a road vehicle out there, we'd look at like a 3/4 1 truck. So if you looked at a Ford, you'd be looking at an F-250 or 350. There's still a solid axle in the front, and they're an 8-lug. Same goes with the Dodge. You'd be looking at the 25, 3500. We'll get into what axles are desirable on episode 2 for doing that. But yeah, getting your Jeep on tons, which is something everyone realizes they want eventually if you're hard on your shit and want to run a big tire. That effectively, for the most part, means an 8-lug axle out of a 1-ton truck. And when you consider big and heavy those trucks are, often they weigh close to double what your Jeep does, and they have a big diesel motor sitting over the top of it, you realize, okay, that axle can take a lot more strain than my factory Jeep half-ton axle.
Don't fall in love with the original wheels because they don't fit.
That's right.
That's awesome. Okay, good. No, that's good, because I see it all the time where everyone's like, hey, I got a Hemi on tons, and then below it you see and I think a lot of people try to ask it without asking it, like I don't know what the hell a ton is, I don't, you know what I mean, I don't know what that means. Everyone knows the Hemi side of things, I think, but not everyone understands what tons mean, so that's
good. You kind of got to be into it for a bit, I think, before you realize, oh shit, I want that.
Yeah.
I want that because everyone else wants it, but okay, here's why I actually want that, because I might want a huge tire and beat on my Jeep relentlessly. So yeah, that's what you mean there. To me, I'd say an 8-lug 1-ton axle. That'd be the most basic.
There we go. Okay, good, awesome, I love it. Okay, so in terms of the stock axles and what they can take, and our sort of understanding of what they are and what components and what have you, did we miss anything? Did we miss covering anything? I
don't know. That's a pretty good one. If someone thinks we did, they can always just shoot a message and
leave a comment below.
Fun stuff, or they can comment on the video or on the podcast, and we're happy to answer it if we missed something. Okay. I think we covered, unless someone had a hyper specific question.
I mean, there are a couple questions, so we can pop over to those, but they're fairly, I think, standard questions, at least at this point. So, first question, and like I said, they're pretty similar, but Zelfuna, I think is his name. Zelfuna? Something like that. I like that name, Zelfuna.
No way you're pronouncing that right. That doesn't sound right.
I'm telling you, man, Zelfuna.
I'm just kidding.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I like the name Zelfuna. You put a Z in front of anything, it's good. There used to be an amazing website called Zunafish. I thought it was the greatest name ever. But it, disappeared.
What, they sell sandwiches? What was it?
It was like a quid pro quo website. So you had something and somebody else had something, then you would just say hey, I'll give you my thing and you give me your thing. It didn't really work out so well. It was a billion years ago. It was a lot of fun, and they got a lot of VC funding, as did everyone in the early 2000s. So they laughed, I think, all the way to the bank, and then they busted. The problem was there's no way to monetize it. Shut her down. But I always thought it was a great name. They literally went to the pantry in the kitchen and just started adding the letter Z to everything in there until they found a tin of tuna fish and came up with Zunafish, and I always thought it was clever. So a little bit off topic, but
I missed the boat on the easy money, that's for sure.
Right? I know. I think everyone did. I don't know. I mean, man, the early 2000s were where it was at. So, okay, so Zelfuna is asking, is there a way to beef up a Dana 30 so that it's as strong as a stock Wagoneer Dana 44? And to be honest, I don't really know what the heck that even means. So, whoever would like to answer this, knock it out.
I'd be curious to know what Dana 30 he's referring to, because I mean, if we're talking JL, I mean, in my opinion, that's gonna be stronger than a Wagoneer 44. Truthfully, housing's bigger, C's are bigger, ring and paint is gonna be better materials. I mean, Dana's kind of heavily invested in improving that platform. If he's talking an older, like YJ Dana 30, no, it's not gonna be quite as stout, but the Wagoneer 44 is not a huge jump up. Like, you'll see most people nowadays axle swapping, we go from Dana 30/44 right to Dana 60. That kind of tweener market of the Dana 44, 48.8, that kind of stuff's just been skipped over. And truthfully, the reason is it was always, in my opinion, just an intermediary step. I saw a lot of people that did that. Maybe you got a year or two more out of your Jeep, but you find the same weak links in those axles, same U-joint size. It's not a big enough ring and pinion. So, yeah, I mean, you could be fucking...
It's like a mid-arm.
Yeah, totally.
Like mid-arm.
Mid-arm of the axle upgrade world. So, yeah, no, I would keep that 30, and obviously we don't know exactly what application we're discussing here, but I would probably keep that 30 until you're going to jump up to a 60. I would not try and beef it up extensively or swap that wagon your 44. I don't think it's desirable.
And it was kind of old news too, right? That was back probably when like 35s were the giant tire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, now I got 65-year-old women that match their lipstick to their Jeep, which is amazing. It still looks amazing, but they're running 35s. You know what I mean? They're just hanging, going to the beach, whatever, right? So back when we were like, you know, a lot younger, you know, 35s were monsters, right? And then that kind of was an easy junkyard swap, I think, back then. That kind of just pulled the wool over your eyes a little bit. Like Tim was saying, a lot of the bearing dimensions and U-joints and axle shafts and everything are really similar, right? So you're not really getting a ton for the effort. I think the effort's not quite equal, but it's pretty close to put a 1-ton under than it is to swap in a Dana 44. Like, you're not that far off, other than, like I mentioned before, the wheels, right? You're going to... If you had a set of rims and tires that you purchased, they're not going to work with the bigger conversion, right? And then he's not even going to get the right wheels either, right? So he'll be, if he's doing that, I think they're 5 on 5.5, the Dana 44 Wagoneers, or they're 6 on 5.5, where he's probably 5 on 4.5 or 5 on 5. Well, he wouldn't be 5 on 5. He's probably 5 on 4.5. So his wheels won't even work anyways, no matter what. So.
Okay, no, and that's interesting. So. A Dana 33, or sorry, a Dana 30, for example, or a Dana 44 or whatever, is not the same across the board. So if I'm talking about like a Dana 30 in a TJ or what have you, and a Dana 30 in a JK, they're not the same. Is that correct?
No, it's like we talked about earlier, that TJ and XJ Dana 30 had a stronger knuckle than the JK Dana 30 and even the Dana 44. So you really, I mean, I think it's silly, but I see some people take JK stuff and put it under a TJ. I don't get why. I mean, you get a little bit extra track width. Other than that, I don't think that's desirable. But yeah, for the most part, if you're swapping a broken Dana 30 for another Dana 30, it's got to be out of the same year range. It's not like you're going to take a TJ Dana 30 and throw it into your JK or JL. It's a completely different axle altogether. That Dana 30 really refers to the center section of ring and pinion. But knuckles can be C's are different. Knuckles can be different. A lot of things can be different on the
brakes are different. Even different hat dimensions. You know what I mean? Like your wheels won't fit. Like it's like we were talking. Like if you do the TJ to the JK or vice versa, your wheels are not the same bolt pattern. So you'd have to change a lot of stuff. I think the only way that I would do the JK under the TJ would be this scenario. Would be like if I got a super crazy deal on some Rubicon JK takeouts that are mint, and I just had a Sport, you know what I mean? And then I would stick the JKs underneath. Then you'd have lockers and stuff and 410s, and you're running 35s. That'd be fun if you got it cheap enough, you know what I mean? And you could do the work yourself at home. I think that'd be the only unicorn move for that reverse swap, to be honest, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, that makes sense.
I was just thinking it out loud, right? But that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, no, that's good. No, that's good to know. Good information. Okay, good stuff. All right,
and you still have my fucking wheels because they ain't going to fit off your TJ. So.
Right. There you go. Awesome. Okay, so next question is from Jeep Her Jen. So she asks, or she says, I guess, I take my Jeep off-roading as much as possible. I'm really interested in running a larger tire on my JK, hoping for 37s. I'd like to upgrade to a Dana 44. So I assume she's got a Sport or a Sahara. So she'd like to upgrade to Dana 44s, but she doesn't have the money to spend right now. Is there anything she can do to strengthen what she has so she can run 37s now and upgrade the rest of the axle, I guess, to the 44 later? And based on what I think you just said, you wouldn't even do that. You just go right to the 60, right? Is that so? Tim, what are you thinking? Anything?
The difference between the 30 and the 44 on all the modern stuff is simply a ring and pinion size. So, I mean, if that's where you're seeing failures, I can see it being desirable to go to the Dana 44. But yeah, all those strength upgrades you do on the 30 are basically the same strength on the 44. Like they've got the 30 and a 44, same tube size, same inner C, same ball joint, same outer knuckle, unit bearing, everything except for the ring and pinion. So if you invest money into beefing up that 30, like if she does, like we were discussing, ring and pinions, traction devices, trusses, upgraded shafts, whatnot, I would not think about walking away from that to do a Dana 44 upgrade. If you need more than that, then yeah, just skip ahead to episode 2 and learn about the 110 action, because that 44 is not going to be a huge gain for you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just question just the ratio, the gear ratio, original gear ratio she has too, right? Because she's got a highway gear in there. Like before you even strengthen that stuff, you probably want to run the proper ratio to work with that if you're going to keep it for a long period of time. And even so, like, even if it's manual or automatic, right? Like we're talking like the tranny, it's tougher on the auto tranny than it is on the manual tranny, like marginally. And then in the computer, if you're not telling it the proper information, it's going to be hunting. It's going to wear stuff out quicker too, right? So that would be it. If she needs more detail, like if she wants more help, we need more details, and we're happy to help walk her through some of that kind of stuff. But yeah, that'd be my kind of questions. Manual, auto, what ratio are we working with, and go from there, kind of thing, you know?
Okay, amazing. All right, good to know. Okay, good stuff. So yeah, so I think that pretty much sums up the episode 1 of the 2 parts on axles and axle upgrades. Yeah, guys, can you think of anything off the top of your head that people should know about, in particular if they're going to maybe keep the stock housings? And
I would just say try and plan out where you're going to be a few years from now, because you could sink as much money into stock axles as very close to 110 swapping. I mean, obviously there's other things like we're going to talk about, like Ryan keeps pumping wheels, like that's a big factor. But if you took stock axles, truss them, gusset them, put every skid plate and upgrade every bracket on it, RCV shafts, reed racing knuckles, brakes, steering, you could be up in a 110 territory. So just try and think ahead. If that's what you want to do, absolutely nothing wrong with it, because obviously it's less work than a full-on axle swap. But I've seen lots of people go that far with the stock axle and then 2 years later regret it, and they're like, I should have just saved that money and pushed for doing a 110 swap sooner. So just kind of try to be realistic about some goals and where you want to go tire size and your style of wheeling.
Okay, cool. Ryan, pretty much the same sentiment?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It just depends on you, like, and you got to pay to play either way, right? So if you think that justification is going to be cool and you're going to have a lot of fun over the next 2 years anyways, whatever, do it, right? And there's always somebody down the chain, someone else's junk, someone else's treasure, right? So you pull those things out and do what you want. You paid to play, it costs you X. If you want to go wheeling 37 times, had a great time with these, so it cost me $200 a time to go wheeling, whatever. Sell them to somebody else, and then do your 110s, right? So there's no really perfectly right answer, that way. It's just kind of you, and maybe you learn yourself, right? You're like, oh man, I really love this. I gotta go up because I've gone further than I thought. Or you'd be like, oh, you know what, this works. Or man, I'm sick of breaking this shit. This is driving me crazy. You know what I mean? There's kind of, those are what it is. Or you get out of it and you buy one of these fancy little electric cars. I don't know, who you are, what you do, right? So it's kind of where it's at. You know what I mean?
Right on. Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, cool. All right, good. So then I guess episode 2. Tim, what did we miss in episode 1 that we're going to cover in episode 2?
Episode 2, we're going to talk axle swaps. So if you're running factory diffs and you bend that housing, what can I do to upgrade it? There's aftermarket options for that, which gets you some more strength. And we're going to get into getting your Jeep on tons, like you discussed earlier. So are we going to choose a junkyard axle? Are we going to choose a crate axle? Advantages and disadvantages of both. I'm sure Ryan and I can both speak to brands we've had success with, perhaps some we haven't had success with, I've had no
success with any axle brands.
There's some nice ones out there, man. I mean,
that's a damn pretty axle.
Whoa, that'd be a metal sliver I wouldn't want.
No. So yeah, we're just gonna get into kind of the next level of axles. If the stock stuff isn't up to par, we don't think it's up to par. Really, what's all involved in getting those 8-lug 110s under your Jeep, cost-wise and upgrade, and how extensive it is.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, leave a comment below. Of course, you can always text us. That number is 716-209-3576. It's pretty cool text community we got going on here. You have questions, we'll be able to answer them. Actually, in between shows even, so it's pretty cool. So once again, that's 716-209-3576 or podcast@gbeef.com. Leave a comment below, and of course, if you learned something, hit that like button and subscribe podcast. Ryan and I were talking, we're thinking, a lot of people will probably be consuming this on the podcast thing, so they don't have to look at our faces. So if if you're tired of looking at us, you just want to listen to us, hit us up on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all those fun things. So we are everywhere. So yeah, awesome. Well, thanks guys for the show. I appreciate it. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure people out in the internet, on the interwebs, learned a lot as well. So thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. So see you later, everyone.